Welcome back to Awkward Insurance. I am so happy to be here and not focused on a conference at the moment, but it is hard to believe that this is actually the end of another season, not of the podcast. An end of a season, season 5. Ashley, where the heck have you been?
I have been hiding, but let me tell you, I am so glad that you were done with all of your conferences for the moment, because I haven't seen your face or Mac's face in the longest time. And I mean, that's partly my fault too, but it's just so glad to be back together, guys. The 3 best friends that anyone could have.
I know, you jumped on the call and I was like, holy heck, there she is. I feel like we're not even acquaintances anymore. It's been such a long time.
You are stuck with me for the long haul.
I hope so. And as always, we have producer Mac here to give his insights on producing the shit show of a podcast. Welcome back to Awkward in person, Matt.
Thank you, Dustin.
So glad to have you here.
You know what? There's been a couple of times this season alone, Ashley, where I'm like, Mac, what do you have to say about this? And he's like, I don't know insurance. I don't have anything to say. Here's what happens. I sit and I'm quiet for a couple of minutes. And then Mac would start speaking, and he has a whole perspective on the insurance industry.
Maybe we can call him out sometime and get him on there.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want me to get started.
We do. We really do. Because as much as we're the insurance know-it-alls, if you will, you're the consumer. You're part of the insurance industry too. There's several legs to this monster.
Well, it's the consumer side. When we talk later about favorite episodes, definitely going to be coming from the consumer side, why some of them were my favorites.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's get into it. As always, if you go back and take a look at our end of season episodes, we kind of take some time to reflect on the guests of this season. And, you know, I think we started season 5 with saying we were going to uncover some myths. In some kind of way, we very much did, even though it wasn't quite like Mythbusters is the way I had envisioned it to be, that we were going to be having some experimental conversations that would just blow everything out of the water. I don't think it happened that way, but we did uncover some lesser known facts of the insurance industry and shed some light on those. So I'm just going to start with you, Ashley. What was your favorite episode, or maybe the most memorable of the season?
I am so glad you asked, Dustin. In fact, I'm surprised that you even had to ask, because I know that in your heart of hearts, you know exactly what my favorite episode was.
Was it the one that when I went to New York, that person was actually there, walked up to me, said she still fully enjoyed our episode, and my cheeks turned red, and the very first thing out of her mouth is, "You're still blushing."
Oh my gosh. I love that. Yes, you are correct. I'm assuming you're referring to Susan Etter.
Yes.
She was, you know, for many reasons, definitely my number one favorite episode. You know, I like to push the limits.
How
as
so?
anyone listening, like, you know, I like to push the limits, and I'm the one who always talks about the things that makes Dustin blush, or she giggles
hot right now,
and she has to mute her mic. So the fact that I got to say the word bejazzled on a podcast and actually like have it mean something, then I knew that was going to be my favorite podcast.
Oh my gosh. Ever since that episode, I have not only heard that word more times in like TV shows that I've watched, but just yesterday, I can't remember, was it? Oh, yes. There is a social media group here in Central Arkansas that is about power women. And most of those posts have to do with getting a divorce and needing an attorney, somebody who's a bulldog or whatever. But there was one specific day this past weekend where those conversation threads just kind of went rogue. And one of those conversations had to do with tattooing certain body parts. And that it was like, well, now that we've learned that women in Central Arkansas get can I say this word? You might have to delete it because I don't even know if I can get it out of my mouth. I think it was called a twat-too.
That's definitely not what I thought you were going to say. I thought it was going to be like a more medical term for a tattoo there. Okay.
I was like, wait a second, I missed a conversation somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about divorces and divorce lawyers.
No, and I was like, oh my gosh. And my first thought was that episode with Susan Etter is like, why didn't we bring up tattoos of an intimate nature. Oh gosh.
I mean, she was the perfect example, and she said that. She said this, I remember during the podcast or some variation of it, like don't judge a book by its cover, because she said, here I am, I have no piercings outside my two regular ear piercings. I'm a white female in her, whatever middle age, and she doesn't have any tattoos, but she knows all of these ins and outs of this, incredible market that she covers.
Yeah. And has special filters on her email in order to allow certain types of photos to come through.
Yeah. So that was my number one favorite,
Mm.
obviously.
What'd you think of that episode, Mac? Because you were sitting behind the scenes and you had to edit all that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't pick that episode because I knew Ash was going to pick that episode,
Oh,
but
sorry.
I mean, I think it's the most fun because it is fun to watch you be that uncomfortable. But I loved it. I thought it was interesting. I think it's interesting to see how needs arise and are met by insurance. Eventually, like somebody's going to insure stuff and it's not going to just go uninsured. If it's happening, then insurance has to mold around it.
What do they say about insurance? Nothing's uninsurable. It's just how much you want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was I'm having a hard time sitting still in my chair right now and not making noise. The shifting back and forth. That was a dicey episode for me. We'll just go ahead and say that. Mac, what was your favorite episode of the season?
I wanted to almost say the Lori Dawson episode. I said I was going to talk about it from a consumer's perspective, and I thought that the information she gave was really helpful, slightly harrowing, but really helpful. It's horrible that people have to do a third appeal for a coverage they should have had to begin with, but at least there's somebody like her that talks about how to get that third appeal going.
Yeah, so this specifically was the breast cancer awareness
Right.
kind of episode that stemmed from my own experience. And I want to take a side moment for just a second. An awkward alum and a dear friend of ours is walking her own journey through breast cancer right now on social media. She's very open about it, so I don't think she'd have any issue with me mentioning her. But our thoughts and prayers are with her. And hopefully, if you can find her on social media, you can follow her journey and then maybe take a look back at Miss Lori Dawson's episode about navigating the insurance side of breast cancer.
So I feel like it's going to look bad now that I didn't pick that as my favorite.
I think
But
you're okay.
for my favorite one, and again, it goes back to the consumer side, I think I liked the Brian Thompson one about parametric stuff because as a
Okay.
consumer, parametric is the only bit of insurance that makes sense to me. I feel like it pushes off a lot of that prohibitively dense language and just says if A happens, B happens.
Okay.
That makes sense. That's like I know what happens. It's not like A happens if B happens as long as C and D were met and there's no exclusion for D because C wasn't covered in your initial policy.
I can't wait to replay this so I can write all of that down and draw out like a scenario that you just said, because that's absolutely true.
Parametric feels like insurance without the gotcha potential.
Without the gotcha potential. Yeah. Okay. So if we think about your perspective for just a moment, well, then that means that you need to buy a separate parametric policy for every single thing you would expect to go wrong if you want to insure that. So I think in particular that like the very first parametric that comes to mind, maybe earthquake or
Mhm.
flood or
Right.
wind hail like Sola. Sola's got they're going to kill me for saying wind and hail because that's not specifically what their product is. I think they call it wind catastrophe or something like that. But so then, yeah, that covers one specific peril. If this happens, then you get paid. If you have a tornado, you get paid a specific dollar amount. So then, what are some other losses? If theft happens, you
Right.
need a policy for that. If water loss happens, you need a policy for that. If fire happens, you need a policy because you would have to buy a parametric policy for each individual thing.
Right.
That kind of you stacks up in my head as the tech stack that everybody, is like, ooh, tech stack. Yeah, well, that's just the premium stack.
So from my side, from the consumer side, and you're right, I don't think of it as peril to peril like you guys do. But for me, it's one peril guaranteed, Whereas a normal insurance policy, I don't really feel sure that any peril is guaranteed because there might be a clause or an exception or an exclusion or an endorsement that I don't know about. So I don't feel comfortable saying anything is covered normally. But with parametric, I feel comfortable saying the one thing I paid for is definitely covered.
Okay.
I like Mac's take. I'm going with that one.
I also adore that Mac is using industry terminology like peril to peril.
I'm telling you, Mac, you know more than you think you know.
I know enough to look like I know something.
We're going to send you a podcast on imposter syndrome from Meg McKean. I want you to listen to that and then report back to us because
So one of my favorite episodes, and maybe it's just because it's an Arkansas hometown girl, was with Terry Strain, and that was the secret world of underwriting. And that all stemmed from a conversation that I had with a colleague of hers at the PIA of Arkansas event in 2023. And he's like, you have to talk to the underwriter here. And he started talking. No, when I talked to Terry for the first time, one of the first things she mentioned was underwriting a chicken catching business. I was like, wait, what? So Ashley, you like to talk about the hidden world of markets and things. And then there's chicken catching that I never thought chicken catching was an actual job role, which just gives me hope that if my kids, don't make it into the professional side of things, they can always fall back on catching chickens.
I mean, nothing surprises me anymore at this point. Like, I remember it was within the last year, somebody contacted me and they needed a market for, I think I told you about this at one point. We might have talked about it in an episode. They had a bee farm here and they had 50,000 bees or something, and they had them spread out on multiple different properties because they didn't want somebody to find it and ruin it and all 50,000 bees are gone or whatever. It might have been 500,000. It was something crazy. And they needed to find transportation insurance for it, like cargo insurance, because they wanted to transport them to California during the cold months.
Bees.
And I'm like, things I never thought I would try to have to find a market for, like bee transportation. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Terry's as well. It was, I hope that agents listened to it and took tips away on how to better prepare themselves when submitting maybe some sort of things outside the box to their underwriter. And like with Terry saying, learn how to fill out an accord form. I mean, that always fascinated me. The fact that when I was in our agency, I would get a cancellation accord form filled out, faxed to us, and it'd be filled out completely incorrectly. And there's like 4 things on there that you have to do. It takes 2 seconds to fill out a cancellation form. And I would be, unfortunately, an asshole, but I also covering my back, and I would send it back to the agent and say, I will process this cancellation when you fill out the form correctly.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to have that on me if I cancel it and then something goes wrong. So it's just, people just rush. They rush, they don't pay attention, and that's when accidents and errors happen.
They do. And the first thing that kind of comes to my head as you're talking is underwriters are people too. They have a job to do too. And, sometimes as insurance agents, I'm just going to focus on the agent role for a minute, knowing that there are 1,000 other roles within the insurance industry, but we can kind of create adversaries just because we think other people are getting in our way when we're trying to sell a policy. We can create adversaries or in trying to advocate for our client and the coverage with an adjuster or whatever, we end up creating adversaries because we want that claim paid and the adjuster is just trying to interpret the policy as reasonably as possible, right? Anyway, so underwriters are adjusters too. If you work with them, they'll work with you, and even sometimes we'll fill out that Accord app for you.
Well, and in the defense of agents, I know towards the end of me being in the agency, turnover is an issue. I mean, when you build that rapport and that relationship with a really good underwriter and they start making exceptions because you can prove why they deserve an exception, that it's going to be safe. They live in the middle of nowhere. There's no reason to have a fence around their swimming pool. There's no one within 10 miles of them. That kind of stuff. That's great. But when you're having turnover and getting a new underwriter every 6 to 12 months, it can be tough because you're not going to get that rapport built and then have them make exceptions for you or really listen. They're just going to be by the book, black or white. That's it. So, I mean, it's tough for both sides, but you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So,
yeah.
Is that the saying? I don't know. I hesitated.
You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Yeah. Mac, I'm going to go back to you for a second. We did a couple of events this season. I think we started with PIA of Arkansas. I journeyed up to Ohio to hang out with Ashley for a little while. I'm so happy that was not caught on a podcast because there's no way in hell I would have ever wanted it caught on a podcast. I still get wrapped up in the way that I obviously was not prepared to stand in front of those women and not bawl my eyes out, but that's okay. And then we went to California for the RIMS Risk World Collegiate Challenge, which was so much fun. After that, was it New York up next? Do we have anything between RIMS and New York? I don't think we did.
No, I think it was Arkansas, San Diego, New York.
Yeah. So InsurTech Insights in New York. Mac, what was your favorite or most memorable experience out of producing those 3 events?
I mean, it had to be the interview with the winners at the Spencer Risk World thing because they were the most like sweet, charming people in the world. They were so excited about it. We were kind of secretly rooting for them anyway.
I'll
Uh,
never admit it, but yeah.
but they were great and they were so fun and excited, and it was just really cool to be a little bitty part of that as they won and celebrated and did all that stuff. So that's got to be the highlight. I mean, New York was great, Arkansas was great, but just being there with them when they won, I think, is the highlight.
Yeah, that really was. So the team from Hyderabad, India,
Hmm.
was the student team that won the RIMS Risk World Collegiate Challenge this year. They were so. I think they were just really connected to the human side of the risk management strategy that they came up with, and you could really tell it. So it just kind of broke down some walls and barriers, even though there was a significant language barrier, which was a new experience for me, was interviewing teams from different countries and
Hmm.
realizing that I could not be as wholly awkward as I usually am. I had to kind of button that up because I just don't know what some people construe as awkward versus rude or weird, or I don't know. But that was a lot of fun. I got to, I don't know, just something about being in that environment. I did a lot of social media posting through the RIMS Risk World
Mm-hmm.
Challenge that I don't normally do. And that was a lot of fun to be able to kind of toy around with that. I wish I could bring that energy every single time. But that really was a fun one, and the goosebumps, just all the
Hmm.
goosebumps the whole time. And just to kind of sidestep for a minute, the challenge is about to gear back up for 2024 for the conference in 2025. They are currently accepting case studies right now. So if you think your company, it doesn't have to be an insurance, your city, your school, your whomever has a fantastic risk management strategy or need that you would like some college students to kind of wrap their head around and produce a risk management strategy for you or an analysis for you, then now is the time to submit to the Spencer Education Foundation for that. And they will start accepting those applications. I think they started accepting them now, and it closes sometime in August of 2024. So be sure to jump on that website, submit your case study if you'd like, and see if some college students could really make use out of your information, and you get something out of them. That'll be a lot of fun because we're going to do that again next year. So I'm really excited to be able to see the differences between 2024 and 2025. Let's flip for not for a second, but let's just keep on going, and let's flip to what we hope to get out of season 6. So Mac, we've had a chance to talk about what we hope season 6 will be. Ashley's hearing it first right now.
I'm just glad I'm not fired.
Yeah, you're not fired.
I'm just glad I'm
ever.
not fired.
Yeah, no. We love Ashley Fitzsimmons with all of our hearts. So for season 6, we are going to focus on job roles, either in the insurance industry or connected or adjacent to the insurance industry. And we hope to bring a lot of different perspectives to that. I think first up, we are going to have the Arkansas Insurance Commissioner to kick that season off. We were able to tackle him while we were at the PA Arkansas conference in April. It was an opportune moment for us to be like, hey, would you like to do a podcast? Mac, that was really kind of funny, wasn't it? Because he ended up, we started talking, and I said, hey, I just put it on your radar. Maybe you'd like to have a podcast sometime. And then I sat down with Mac and I was like, it's going to be so hard to get him scheduled for this. Like I'm gonna go and ask him right now if he would do it right now. Just right this second. And you know what? It just kind of brought it back into perspective. It just asked the damn question, right? I don't think I have received a no yet when it comes to asking for something in terms of a subject matter expert, or would you like to collaborate on an article, produce a podcast, do a webinar, do this, do that, whatever. Just ask the damn question. The worst you can get is no, or hey, let's, pin this for next year or whatever. So that was pretty amazing. We're going to have a job role focus that's adjacent to insurance for the realtor side of things, because we all know as insurance agents, working with realtors can sometimes be a sticky spot when it comes to our clients purchasing a new home. Those clients kind of get stuck in the middle of both of us. Sometimes that loan processor or loan officer is also stuck in that equation with us. So maybe we need to find one of those to be on the podcast. We have scheduled a venture capitalist that works within the insurtech industry. So we're going to understand how venture capitalists work on the tech side to better the insurance industry. And then an insurance communications role with one of our favorite people. You'll have to wait and see who that is. Ashley adores this person to pieces, and I just can't wait to see her on the episode with him again.
Well, she's like, who are you talking about?
We're not releasing any names. So we've got so many more job roles planned. If you have a thought on what job role you'd like for us to explore, we'd love for you to either jump on the Awkward Insurance Facebook page and let us know not only the job role that you would like explored, but maybe who you think would best fit for that interview. But what do you think, Ashley? What are your hopes for season 6?
I don't know. I'm flustered now. So, no, I mean, I really enjoyed, spoiler alert, we already recorded, the realtor, which was my personal realtor in the process of buying our first home. And that conversation, really evolved throughout the entire time. Like really at the end of it, he's like, yeah, I don't think about this stuff on my end of things. And I really think that that's going to be a helpful conversation for agents and how they talk to realtors or how they explain things differently to them, because I think sometimes we just get mad or annoyed with them, and this is educating them on how they can work better together and it can benefit both sides. So I'm just hoping that we get people on here that can help agents connect outside of their industry, but with, like you said, insurance adjacent industries that we typically would work with on a daily basis anyway.
I like it. Mac, what are your hopes for season 6? Anything you need us to change through your edits? I think we talked about before this. I need to stop interrupting people, but you do a phenomenal job of separating the audio track so it doesn't sound like I interrupt people.
No, you've never interrupted, and there's no proof of it, and that's fine. I just want it to be useful. Like I brought up the Lori Dawson one. I thought that episode was really useful, and they'll be fun, they'll be interesting, but as long as they can be a little bit useful too, that keeps me happy.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thanks for joining us on this wildly awkward ride through the insurance industry. Keep your eyes on the Awkward Insurance Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel for the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance, because I think I failed to mention that I was able to talk Mac into some video exclusive at the InsurTech Insights New York conference. So there are some videos that aren't on the podcast that are on the YouTube channel. Thanks so much. See you next time. Toodles, everybody.
Bye.
Now let's listen to some bloopers. And no words out of anybody's mouths whatsoever. If you do, you die. Okay. Welcome to Nat Alliance Now. Welcome to Nat Alliance Now. This is an Awkward Insurance podcast takeover. I'm your host. We also touched on the role of third-party vendors. Excuse me, I'm salivating. We also touch on the role. In addition to this episode, head over to you. Okay, that was pretty. Oh, I just stomped my foot. My bad. Getting a little excited over here. When we walked off stage, we were bombarded by technologists interested in engaging in education and. When we walked off stage, we were bombarded by technologists. That daggum tongue. When we walked off stage, we were bombarded by technologists. The next word is harder after you get technologists, right? We'll try it. We'll see what happens. All right, let's go. Okay, it ends with, I would like to redo it. Can I say later, Tater?